Suresh, you've seen the John Keells property sector from day zero before it was even considered a sector in the John Keells Group. When you kind of look back at it now, did you ever imagine it would be what it is today?
Well, that was always the grand scheme of things. But what I see today is actually surpassed all expectations that we had. But I'm really proud to see what the sector has achieved and the kind of positioning it has got. And I believe that it has got immense future as well. So it gives me a lot of gratification to see where we are today. But it was always the vision. I remember we started off with a strategy for as to where we would go to, and the strategy and the plan was always to being a leader in the industry. And when I can see that we are very much there, and that's really satisfying.
And back then you saw the potential for property development, and did you envision it kind of getting to this scale that we are in today?
Well, property developer John Keells, as an industry or industry sector, came through a whole strategic study that we did. So if I just step back into a little bit of the history, uh, John Keells over the years, through its acquisitions of other businesses, be it Vitol Boutzers, Lawn Cold Stores, through Vitol Boutzers or Mackinnon's, had acquired a massive land bank in the city of Colombo. I would think that the land bank of the Keells Group was the largest, probably it's only the government that had a bigger land bank. We probably had about 40 acres of prime land. At the same time, along with at Histra HP and Nation Hotels, there was also property development taking place under the Crescat residencies. And seeing the success of that, that's when John Keells embarked and made it a business vertical of its own, and built up around a strategy that we put together. And we followed it. We followed it right through. And not only have we followed it, but we have innovated and excelled in what we have done. So there we are.
And acquiring Asian hotels and properties at the time, it was in the midst of a war. And what gave you all the confidence at the time to make this kind of large acquisition, not knowing, that this war was going to end anytime soon? There were curfews in place on and off. I will talk through, what you went through with the projects later on, but just want to get your thinking there because it was a very big acquisition for John Keells at the time.
I must be honest, I wasn't in the group when the acquisition itself took place, but I joined the group soon after.
Sure.
But it was probably one of the bravest acquisitions we made. And that was also on the back of John Keells having also invested in the South Asia Gateway Terminal a few years ago. And this was during that little window of peace that Sri Lanka had. It was by far the biggest stock exchange transaction that took place during that time. The prime motive was really getting our foothold into the city hotels and the city hotel sector with Cinema World, which was then Colombo Plaza, and the Trans-Asia Hotel. But then with that came 9 acres or 10 acres of land where Cinema Grand today sits, and another 7 acres over here. That's Cinema Lakeside. So that was basically what came with the acquisition. But we also saw the success of Crescat residencies, and we just launching from there. We learned our way through, but we actually transformed the industry. We went out to modernize what apartment living was all about. I remember at that time our benchmark was Singapore, and the studies were done based on the Singaporean model to Korean developers, and that's how Monarch was actually started off. And when I joined the group, Monarch was halfway built, or just almost halfway built.
So with Monarch, of course, it wouldn't have been easy coming in halfway through and taking over this construction. Just talk us through that whole process and if there were any challenges that you faced at the time.
Yeah, I think when it comes to challenges, we faced immense amount of challenges. and you were never short of challenges, and there's always new ones. So we thought we had learned, and then there's something else to learn. But what we had was brilliant teams, brilliant people, an amazing dedication, and also in terms of what we gave out, there's always the customer focus. You always, wanted to see what the customer would want. And building Monarch coming through halfway, it was at the height of the war had restarted. And I remember the challenges of just getting concrete trucks into this site, which was, we had the temple trees on one side, and the whole parliament and the whole presidential secretariat was on that side. Our biggest fear was, would the trucks be stopped long enough for the concrete unit to get hardened? And we would never get the concreters on time. It was during that time we used to work with the police just to get a window opportunity to get the trucks in. But that was how it was started. But we also learned as we went on. We made another share of mistakes, but we funded up to every one of them. And Monarch, at that time, there was a huge demand and interest, especially from the expatriate community and the Sri Lankans who were looking for other forms of investment in Sri Lanka as well. So that was the opportunity we actually played on. Monarch got sold extremely fast. And on the back of that, we launched Emperor. Yes, soon after. So in terms of construction, we had our learnings, but we were able to, as a team, overcome all of them, and today, I guess, one of the best investments people have ever made.
For sure. I just want to touch a little bit on the kind of post-war optimism that the group had. So straight after 2009, I think On 320 was launched maybe a few months post the end of the war, the whole concept of it. Can you just talk us through that and your kind of thinking through it, because you were right there at the start of it?
So with the war ending, we saw huge opportunities, and at that time the group decided that we'll do something big, something really, really big. On 320 was launched, and that was actually moving away from the luxury segment that we were in, to really approach the bigger market segment. I wouldn't call it non-luxury, but a bigger market segment, and give people an opportunity to live in a fantastic location at a price they can afford. And at that time, when we actually launched on 320, when you look at a 700 or 800 square foot apartment, people said, what is the building? Nobody would buy it. I remember on first day, 150 apartments got sold. We were signing, I stayed up the night signing the sale and purchase agreement, SPS, yeah. So that was how it got launched, and that was, the small apartment, make it very affordable. It was like, the Tata Nano of apartments, if you like, make it affordable to everybody, right in the heart of the city. At the same time, we were also planning something really big, and that's when we looked at where the waterfront properties are, where Cinema Life is today. And of course, that took a long time to launch. But in the meantime, whilst we were doing on 320, we also launched the 7 Sense Beverage Road, which was then going to the other end of luxury. And it was, whilst here we were trying to make it affordable, there we were actually competing with the home buyer who was buying a house down the Gregory's Road vicinity. So it was like, there it was at a different price level, but actually giving big, spacious, luxurious apartments in a small enclave, but making it a proper real a home with all the security and the serenity that comes with it. So it's running them both parallelly, and those are all during the time that we were coming out of this the war crisis, and then in the meantime we were planning the whole Cinema Life project, which is a story in itself.
And just coming back to On 320, we hear of this story where you had walked into, I think, Inoka's room, and you all had looked at the land and just drawn 4 towers and said, this is something that we should look at. And it ended up being 3 towers with the pool on the corner and the common area.
Yeah, we wanted to build something that was, in order to make it affordable, it had to be also economical. that were economical both to build and also to operate. So it had to be something that we could make maximum use. So on 320, the name 320 comes through because it's got 320 perches. It's also number 320 Union Place. Yeah, so that's where the on 320 came from. And yeah, so we wanted something that was very economical, and it was like me, because I got a financial background. It was like, economy and everything. It just draw squares and say, why can't you do it this way? And that's where you get the maximum efficiency. And that was how it got and got developed. But the teams did a lot of work there out. It was easy for me to just go, scroll on somebody's piece of paper. But did a lot to work to get to what it was. And it was almost like, we built a community around on the 20. It's got some phenomenal recreational spaces. The deck itself is a rather, like I said, deck. You have a jogging track at 5 floors up there.
The apartment started at just over 12 million rupees for a 2-bedroom unit. And just looking back at Union Place back in 2010, no one was really building apartments on Union Place. It was not a desirable location at the time, but it was, I think, on 320 that really transformed it to a great extent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking about markets, I think, when we started off, apartment living was not something that people were going to do. If we did a survey at that time, I remember AC Nielsen did that survey. And although there was a huge dearth of accommodation, residences in the metropolitan region and also in the city of Colombo, uh, people were not willing to live in apartments. Apartment was not what they were looking for. It was more like, the urban sprawl that they can pay. People are building further and further in the suburbs. And the transportation systems had not developed. All the schools were and are in the city. All the places of work were and are in the city. And there were this huge commute that had to take place. So we recognize the potential for apartments because there was no land. And at that time, there were very few resident apartments buildings that were there. Around our time, we had the Havelock City starting off. At that time, they came up with 1,100 or something apartments. Okay, they built in phases, but that was the master plan. And there were some other smaller developers who were very successful, who are very successful um, even now. But that was the time, and so that was when apartment the interest in apartments was very, very small. But today it's kind of turned on its head.
See that
And
transformation.
absolutely, people are opting now to move out of homes into apartments because it's a lifestyle now. It's easy for you to move around. It's easier for your lifestyle. You can shut the door, travel abroad. It's easier for security, safety, convenience, and all that kind of things. So now it's no more from what was, do I really want to live in an apartment? To, yes, I must live in an apartment. It's much more convenient. So that's kind of the transformation.
And we are probably going to follow regional cities like Malaysia, Singapore, and we are only at about 14% occupied housing being apartments.
And you take any major city in this region, take it to the KL, Singapore is literally 100%. But you just take, KL, or even Mumbai is near 80-90%. And so, you look at any city, whether it's Chennai and the tier 1 cities in India to all that, it's what it is. It's what it is. And it's the population growth and the land doesn't grow with it. So they'll just have to move up. So it's a case of, staying ahead of the curve and, building better and better and propositions for your clients, yeah.
So, Suresh, I'd like to come back to this whole post-war optimism and now coming to the big one, which is City of Dreams, Sri Lanka and Cinnamon Life. At that time, it was conceptualized as waterfront properties and then branded as Cinnamon Life. So I'd like you to maybe talk through that whole process from conceptualization post-war and going into the project and give us some depth in terms of, your view and your experience through this entire project.
If it is easy to summarize it when the brief was given to Mrs. Cecil Belmont. I remember in this room, Ajit Kunawardhan and myself and Cecil sat down there. And Ajit said he wanted something that Colombo could be a building by which Colombo could be recognized. And the parallel he drew was the Opera House, and then everybody knows it's Sydney, or the Eiffel Tower, and everybody knows it's Paris. That was the kind of I think. And recently, we once had the Petronas in Malaysia, in KL, and stuff like that. It is something that basically would be the what Colombo would recognize at. And then to add to that, we also felt that there was a huge potential. This is, now peace has come back, and this is such a beautiful city with, poised for growth, that it had to be the epicenter for lifestyle and entertainment for the whole South Asian region. And that was basically what was required, what was anticipated, and what was given as a brief to the client, to the architect. And it's based on that Cecil actually designed the building. So hence a shape that is not the regular shape. Everybody builds, a square building or a tall tower or whatever, and here is a shape. Why does it have a shape? Because it's different from everything else. You'll be recognized by the shape. Why are those cantilevered and protrusions that are out there? So it just kind of makes it different to everything else. So that's basically how it was envisaged. So it was more than the building. It was going to be what the building meant and what it was going to basically create for the city. So it was going to be the game changer for Colombo, the game changer for Sri Lanka. And that's what we set out to achieve. And that is what we are quietly and surely achieving today.
And this is 15 years ago, you also envisaged the growth of India and how big India is going to be. And that Sri Lanka has to just kind of hook on to that, and you need the proposition that will transform Colombo as a destination.
And today you see that because you're seeing groups and booking into Sri Lanka would never have had booked before. But that is because the whole view on Colombo has changed. The view on Colombo has changed, and the fact that we're there and we provide what we provide in form of entertainment and the casino and everything helps in the whole process. And that's basically taken up the city occupancy in the hotels up a couple of notches. And we've had probably this November was the greatest, biggest occupancy that the city had ever seen, City Club, with the additional inventory that is there. And I would say much of the credit goes to Cinema Life.
That's great. And at that time, you conceptualized, having banqueting and convention spaces for up to 4,500 people across multiple locations. So the thinking behind that was really the growth of the MICE segment. Absolutely. So was there a lot of kind of research that went into that at the time?
Yes. I mean, there was a lot of work that was done. There were a lot of consultants that were commissioned, consulted to do that. Of course, the target market is India, so we worked very closely with the origin markets of India. So we had people like Joyce Langdasar and everybody else who were advised, who were helping us in basically identifying the potential, but also in the tourism industry itself. To identify what kind of market potential was there, and it is basically very, very targeted in the context of how we designed what we did.
I think everyone has the opportunity to experience this great building now. But I'd like to just track back a little bit, Suresh, for you to talk us through everything you went through from the construction side, because you were leading that effort from the very start through the property sector. And I'd just like you to touch upon, kind of the main challenges you went through, because it wasn't easy. You went through multiple crises. You went through COVID, you went through the East attacks, the financial crisis. So all of this. So I'd like you to maybe just track back and just talk through some of that.
Yeah, the scale of the building itself was the first challenge. I don't think anybody really appreciated and understood the scale. I mean, when you talk about 4.5 million square feet, that's massive. But if you look at it, the kind of context, right? There is almost 200,000 cubic meters of concrete that has been put in there. That's probably, almost or a little less than the Victoria Dam. Right? That's the kind of level of concrete. If you put, there are 1,800 piles. If you put all those piles one on top of the other, it would be double the height of Mount Everest. That's the kind of, the scale of that project. The cabling, it's almost 20,000 kilometers of cable. That's half the world. It'll go take you halfway around the world. And if you, I think, put all um, the ducks that are there, we'll probably be crisscrossing the Sri Lanka 7 times. That's the kind of scale. It is huge. 60 million man-hours of work, right? So that's massive. Nothing has been built, um, definitely by the private sector, and not even by the government. I mean, just to give an idea, I think the electricity capacity of Cinnamon Life is just a little less than the Bandaranaike International Airport. That's the kind of, the scale at which we build. So when you build something at those scales, it's not easy, and to manage everything that goes into a project of that nature is very, very difficult. We had a team, experienced team, but a whole lot of coordination needed to be done to get all the pieces together. And also it was time of, there were challenges. I mean, before we came to the COVID and all that kind of thing, even in terms of, getting our designs right, getting the designs agreed within ourselves, I said that was really what we wanted from the market. Also, what we wanted from the business took us a lot of, rethinking, redesigning all on the run. We had a international contractor, a world-class contractor. Managing them is also a challenge. So and we actually did a lot of work in redesigning some spaces. We set up an office in Portugal, in Porto, which is like, the same time zone as UK, but much cheaper to work out of Porto than to work out of London. So we set up an office in Porto to work out the design. But all of it, we had some amazing people, amazing teams with us who actually put our heads together, and we were able to get this out, overcome all of this. And I'm saying we had that was primarily what brought us to where we were. And then came, of course, first it was the Easter bombs that created a little bit of blip. Then came, so on the back of that came the COVID, so we had literally a shutdown. Then it took a while after that to really get the logistics moving the way we wanted, so that pushed us back a little more in terms of timing. And then everything kind of settled down only, post-COVID. And then we had the economic crisis, and that created a certain amount of, again, delays in terms of getting our imports in, creating things of customs, getting the exchange. I mean, all those kind of uncertainties, the exchange rates are flying all over the place. So it is quite challenging. But I would think there were the right people at the right time in the right place. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the people who worked on this project, who actually were able to pull this through. I think it's not something that you would do every day. I think it's probably once in a generation kind of project that takes place at this scale. And the scale is massive.
That's right. So in terms of replacing an asset like this, it's very difficult. Yeah. I mean, even in terms of the cost and also in terms of going through a project of this scale, it's not going to happen for a long time in Sri Lanka.
The complexity of these projects are huge. So it's not something that one would willingly go into. But once you take it on, you just have to deliver it at the end. And that's what it is.
So just touching on kind of the property sector as a whole, kind of looking back at it now, Suresh, what are you most proud of from your time in the property sector?
I think what I'm most proud of is how it has evolved to be. right? And how the team now is able to really understand what the market needs, move with the markets, and be able to deliver and evolve the product to deliver what the market is looking for. I mean, I just take Trizen, the smart home scheme. That's again thinking out of the box, right? I also think it's the first time that somebody actually builds studio apartments to sell as on a commercial basis. Very successful, right? So I would think, it's the innovation, the ability to innovate. Uh, then take Wiman, that's happening now out in the suburbs, extremely successful, right? And that's creating communities. It's creating, a community feeling. And one of the things is that the credibility of the property, the John Keells property developer has been immense. We have, it's not easy to keep developing and still um, keep the customers and the clients loyal to us, and that's because we are not let down anybody.
Yes. And it's the trust factor. And one thing, Suresh, is, I mean, I recall when I joined the sector, even as far as back as 2014, we were using escrow accounts even at that time. And today we are still probably the only developer using escrow accounts to give customers that level of assurance that your money is safe with us.
And we are probably the only developer who has to chase our customers to sign the deed of transfer because they're quite happy to just let it be. They don't even want to, because the trust in the group is so huge.
That's right. Yeah. All right, Suresh, thank you very much. Thanks for spending this time with us. And we wish you all the very best for your future endeavors.
Thank you, Nadeem. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And it's been an absolute pleasure right through my career working with the property group and eventually ending up with Leisure Cinema and Life and the Leisure. And I wish you guys all the very best.
Thank you. Thanks, Suresh. Thank you.